Hey folks, welcome to Israel Explained. Iran just attacked Israel with 181 missiles addition. So, a lot to cover today, and I'll try to do it relatively briefly. Busy day, lots going on. So, we had 101 rockets launched at Israel. That's the official tally. The attack is said to be about twice as large, twice as significant as the one on April 14th. This time, U.S. participation was much more minor than it had been last time. The Pentagon said two U.S. Navy destroyers fired about a dozen interceptors against Iranian missiles aimed at Israel, took out a few. Most of them were shot down by Israel itself. One Palestinian was killed in Jericho. There were many hits in Israel, but the way the Israeli defense system works, it allows missiles to hit in areas that aren't concentrated with population, and in some cases, it also misses. But no Israelis were killed, making this a big success from the perspective of Israeli defense. Now, there's a question of whether Iran really launched these missiles in order to cause terrible damage to Israel or not. Not so much that Iran doesn't want to cause terrible damage to Israel, of course it does, but I'm not sure that it believed that it could by, shooting missiles, which last time didn't do much. I think that what they were trying to do was to rally their people, rally their supporters, and give them a morale boost. And that definitely worked. We saw demonstrations, pro-Iranian demonstrations, in all over the West Bank, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, different places, kind of a counter to the pro-Israel or anti-Hezbollah, I should say, demonstrations that took place after Israel killed Nasrallah. Now, the Iranians are claiming that 90% of their missiles hit their target, which is, of course, not true. But they have their propaganda people who will say anything, you know, for those purposes. So I think it was effective on a PR level. Meanwhile, more effectively, there was a shooting terror attack in Jaffa, which killed seven. It involved two men with standard issue IDF M16s, which raises a lot of questions, who shot at people at the train station. A slaughter that was somewhat reminiscent of some of the things that happened on October 7th. That was quickly forgotten with the missile attacks. Earlier in the day, the big story was that the IDF was operating in Lebanon, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. They found tunnels, they found infrastructure for an attack, seemed to imply that Hezbollah was planning an October 7th style attack, which some people think could have been much worse because their soldiers, their elite soldiers, the Radwan unit, are better trained than the Hamas Nukhba, or at least that's how the legend goes. So a lot going on there. So IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari called this, quote, severe and dangerous escalation. And he said there will be consequences. Our defensive and offensive capabilities are at the highest levels of readiness. Our operational plans are ready. We will respond wherever, whenever, and however we choose in accordance with the directives of the government of Israel. And even before this attack took place, and everyone knew it was coming, there had been a lot of talk about what this response would be. Nadav Eyal, who's a top correspondent for Yediot Ahronot, wrote that Israel has been considering a strike on the nuclear facilities, which makes sense. Netanyahu has been having a lot of success with these aggressive military operations, and nothing is more headline grabbing than that would be. And of course, Israel has an interest, a very important interest, in destroying the Iranian nuclear facilities. But the other option is the oil facilities. Remember, just a couple of days ago, and the news cycle is moving so incredibly fast. In Yemen, Israel destroyed the oil capabilities of the Houthi rebels, and or a lot of them. And that was meant as sort of a signal to Iran that you're next if you attack us. And they attacked anyway. So if Israel doesn't do something like that, it almost makes them seem weak. It makes Israel seem like a paper tiger. So I would be very surprised if they don't do that. Israel will probably keep the nuclear facilities for a higher level of escalation. You want to keep something in reserve, but also, I don't know if Israel really can destroy the nuclear facilities. So it might be showing some weakness if it tries. So that's a couple of concerns that have happened there. Despite the fact that there's been a lot of differences between Israel and the Biden administration over several issues, as usual, when it comes to Iran, it's very tight. Doesn't seem to be any daylight there. Netanyahu must have been happy to hear Biden say that Iran's ballistic missile attack was defeated and ineffective. And he added, make no mistake, the United States is fully, fully, fully supportive of Israel. And Jake Sullivan said there will be severe consequences for this attack, and we will work with Israel to make that the case. Either way, Israeli sources are saying to me, to other people, to anyone who'll listen, this time the response will be much more severe. So when I say that I think the next attack will be on oil facilities, I think it will be a very big one. One that will have a big economic price. That could upset the Harris campaign and the Biden administration because the last thing you want is the price of oil going up. People of Iran are already concerned about that. We saw lines of cars in Iran in gas stations, worrying about that coming very soon. So this was another success for Israel. The assassination of Nasrallah was a success for Israel. It looks like the incursion into Lebanon was a success. Assassination of Hania, so on and so forth. A real string of IDF successes recently. More assassinations than anyone can shake a stick at. But really, we're left with the question of where does this all bring us? Israel has the upper hand in the war right now, even in Gaza, less in Gaza, but certainly everywhere else. And that is a lot better than not having the upper hand, right? To state the obvious. You don't need to be a strategic genius to know that. But is Israel going to be able to leverage this advantage into a better future with more security for Israel? Because what I'm seeing right now is I'm seeing Israel's becoming incredibly good at um, these tactical operations, but I'm not seeing any change in its ability to envision a strategy that will ultimately bring security back to Israel. Because the way things look right now, Israel is going to be shot at regularly from every direction. And the escalation of force, I think there's room still to escalate more. I think having threatened Iran, Israel has to respond now. There's no way around it. Um, Pressure needs to continue to be put on Hezbollah since it's close to the point of cracking, to make it actually crack as much as you can without a major invasion. But all this time, you have to start working towards some kind of diplomatic architecture where Israel can leverage that advantage into security for its citizens. I'm not even talking about peace. I'm just talking about some kind of sustainable peace and quiet on the tactical level. My fear is that Israel is getting a little bit addicted to the big strikes and the satisfaction and political popularity that comes with them. And right now it's working very well. I am concerned there'll be one strike too many that will backfire. But we'll be watching this very closely. And next report, if something else dramatic doesn't happen, which very well may, I'll talk about what's happening in Lebanon and the Israeli incursion into there. The last video was very popular, and thank you to everyone who watched it. I have a couple of questions. One from longtime watcher Pratchett Guyman. He said, I've seen people speculating online that Israel's ability to take out Hezbollah's command structure uh, might be due to them getting info from some element of the Lebanese government or anti Hezbollah political faction. Do you think this is plausible? And if so, might it lead to a changed relationship between Israel and Lebanon? So it's absolutely plausible. There's plenty of people in Lebanon who hate Hezbollah. Some of them even like Israel. And certainly for money or whatever, they'd be willing to cooperate with Israel. That's different from changing an entire relationship. There's some fantasies people have about Israel having peace with Lebanon, a better relationship with Lebanon. Lebanon's complex. The Shiites are the biggest group. They generally hate Israel and support Hezbollah. A lot of the other groups Israel's not very popular with. Even the Christians, who were the most popular with, Israel soured their relations with them in the 1980s. They're no longer as pro-Israeli as they used to be. It's hard for me to believe that Israel can have a better relationship with Lebanon anytime soon. Ender Totem asks, have you considered the possibility that Israel wins militarily but loses in every other way? If some of the type of people that drive the economy leave the country and don't come back, that could snowball, and at the same time, Israel is losing public support in America, which could have political consequences. If both these situations are like doors that only swing one way, what then? Yes, this is exactly my concern. If Israel has a right wing government that does nothing but pursue right wing goals, whether they're acceptable to the international community or not, ultimately it may not have the um, diplomatic wherewithal to maintain the trade that it needs, the cash investments that it needs, and the arms that it needs, as well as the UN veto to avoid sanctions. Ultimately, all these victories could end up leading to terrible failure. You know, the United States didn't lose many battles in Vietnam, but ended up losing the war because it didn't have a coherent political strategy, just had a military one. So I'm very concerned about that. Okay, I'm going to stop there. If you like what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon at Shael Media. Listen to my podcast, the History of the Land of Israel podcast, and I'll see you here again very soon.